Greetings, fellow lovers of the literary world, and thank you for joining me once again. For those of you that do, and many of you visit me, watch a few seconds of a video, and then unsubscribe or block me or something. But anyway, for those of you that do enjoy coming along and hearing me ramble monotonously about literature or life, savings, marriage, music, whatever it may be, thank you. And today I wanted to chat to you about one of my favorite writers, and honestly, I've always, even though I'm from England and grew up, of course, with English literature and went to an English university and so on, I've always struggled a little bit with literature from England, because although it's what we often perceive to be the origins and the real pillar of literature, if you like, I personally find a lot of it quite boring. I really struggle with Charles Dickens, with the exception of a few lines here and there, and you could probably apply the same to Shakespeare. Oh man, there go another 1,000 subscribers. But one writer that I do truly love is Thomas Hardy, and many people have referred to him as the Pope of Mope, and that's probably why I love him, similar to my music interested Morrissey, who's also been referred to as the Pope of Mope. But Thomas Hardy certainly was the original, if there was one. And this book was originally published in 1895, Jude the Obscure. And it turned out to be Hardy's final novel. He turned to poetry afterwards. And one of the reasons for that was that he was so brutally attacked, essentially, by the Victorian establishment, because he attacked the sacred institution of marriage. And I say it with a smile on my face, because when I have the privilege of reading Thomas Hardy a century later, more than a century after it was published, and I find it quite funny that he wrote these very picturesque, scenic novels of the beautiful rolling hills of England and so on, and it was always some really romantic, passionate relationship of two people who just met walking down an old English alley while someone was in the garden, and they fell in love, and it was passion, love at first sight. And then inevitably, and this is where the smile really appears, and you can tell that I'm probably a little bit evil, as soon as the wedding bells ring and the marriage certificate is signed, it instantly, literally with the signing of that certificate, falls apart into complete ruin and disaster. And I think that was one of the key dilemmas of humankind's dealings with relationships, and in particular marriage, was how it can change when that loving, passionate relationship is handed over into the hands of the law, the government. You're signing a contract to the government to say, I can no longer legally be free. I can't decide of my own accord to end this relationship and move back into a life of freedom. I have to actually go to the government and say, I would like to end this relationship, and they say, what is the reason? Why would you do this? And then in many cases, of course, it ends up costing people their homes and their fortunes, if they have fortunes. Usually by the time you reach this point, you're already so buried in debt that there's no hope. And where Hardy really gets himself into trouble is not just this exploration of the institution of marriage, but the exploration of sex in relationships too, and also social class and status. In the book, the protagonist, Jude, is hoping to study in Christminster, which is essentially a fictitious place that Hardy is based on Oxford. And you imagine Oxford University. And the reason that he can't study there is none other than that he simply doesn't have the financial ability to study there. But he, as he moves towards the place and builds his plan to eventually try to go to university there, he meets this woman, Sue Bridehead, and falls in love with her, and she falls in love with him, but she happens to be married. And so part of the complexity around this falling in love is Sue's existing marriage. And not only does she find herself now in this complicated situation where she's in love with someone who's 2 decades older than her, but she also suddenly becomes disgusted by the idea of sex with her husband. You can imagine the complexities, the envy, the rage that comes from those old, stuffy, conservative guys who are sitting around. This lady is in love with someone else who's outside of the marriage, and this is unacceptable because it could happen to me, and I am jealous, and I don't want anybody else having fun, and I don't want anybody leaving me or cheating on me or doing whatever. And in the end, sure, it's a tragedy to lose your relationship or to have your lover or your partner leave you for somebody else, but at the same time it's also life, and you cannot prevent that by trying to imprison someone or by holding on to someone so ferociously that they cannot live their life, that they end up resenting you. And for me, the premise of literature as a whole, you could almost argue, is around this. I think so much of the creative arts stem from the pain of love and life and loss, and trying to deal with that loss. And we see that people have different ways of dealing with it, but, and I've probably said this before, but one of the most truthful things is, if you love something, let it go. And we see so many people who are in dangerously unhappy situations, and I say dangerously because they are being held captive, and relationships become violent and abusive because somebody wants to leave or is talking of leaving, or because they've had fun talking to another person, or it may have gone well beyond that, but in the end, what can you do? Yes, you have to try to talk and explain that you still feel love, you still hope and want a relationship to last, but ultimately, if it's done, it's done. If somebody wants to leave, let them leave. You're going to achieve nothing by trying to control them and restrict them. And unfortunately, in many cases, marriage falls into this category of trying to control and keep someone, even if they don't want to be there. And often children become the same thing. In my own personal life, I've known male friends or acquaintances, really more acquaintances, because the majority, or hopefully none of my friends, fall into this category, but I have known acquaintances who have felt threatened because their fiancés, girlfriends, wives have a friendship with another male, and therefore this particular male thinks, I'm going to have children because I think that will bring us closer, and that may also make her a little less interested in them, and it may make them a little less interested in her, and it's all completely sick. And I waffle on, and I digress. I'm getting carried away. I'm not going to say too much more about the book. I mean, go out there, get a copy, read it. It's not always easy. I remember reading a lot of it while I was commuting on the train in England. And there were many pages that I thought, I'm going to put the book down, I'm going to walk to the door of the train, and I'm going to throw myself off onto the track. But other than that, a truly remarkable novel, book, and writer. Go out there and read Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy.